I brought the bench. That may be cheating, but 5 people arriving with failures and nowhere responsible to put them is how you accidentally invent a launch program. Aluminum extrusion, polycarbonate shield, 2 catch trays, 1 fire blanket, 1 cutoff switch. The switch is mechanical and red. Cole, before you ask, it interrupts power rather than politely requesting that software interrupt power. The audience can stay behind the yellow line. We'll stay behind it whenever something is energized. Each of us gets 1 prediction before each test, 1 specific break, not a cloud of apprehension. Afterward, 2 notes, what technically failed and what the failure does not prove about its maker.
I appreciate that you built a laboratory for what most institutions call Tuesday. I brought an idea because the invitation allowed ideas, and because if I brought a toaster, somebody would accuse me of having a position on gluten. The idea is a claim ledger. One side says what I believe. Next to it, what would make me change my mind? Then the date, the result, and whether I actually changed my mind or merely hired better adjectives. It is designed to survive being wrong once without turning the person who wrote it into either a prophet or a corpse.
You brought a notebook that can heckle you.
Exactly. Finally, an audience with standards.
I brought a current limited bench supply and a small validator board. The board watches a sensor, reports whether the reading is plausible, and opens a relay if the reading leaves its allowed envelope. The controlled failure is that I can disconnect the sensor's ground while leaving its signal line attached. The validator may continue reporting a believable number. My prediction is specific. The sensor input will float toward 2.1 volts, which the firmware interprets as normal pressure, so the protective mechanism will fail by approving a measurement it no longer has grounds to trust.
That is wonderfully mean.
To the board, yes, not to its maker.
That distinction is why we're here, right? We're going to beat up everybody's little object and then write it a character reference.
A technically accurate character reference. I brought a 3-link arm made from hobby servos. It can lift this wooden block, move it across the bench, and place it inside the catch tray. The elbow horn has 1 deliberately weakened spline. Under an ordinary lift, it should hold. Under a small obstruction, it should slip instead of transferring the full load into the gearbox. My prediction, the elbow horn slips by about 15 degrees. When the block meets the stop, the block drops into the tray, and nothing else breaks.
A sacrificial joint.
Yes, it fails locally so the system can remain legible. If the motor burns out instead, I have misunderstood where the force goes.
I brought a joke.
What catches the pieces?
Ideally us. It's a joke built with a removable last line. I tell it once with the ending I wrote, then somebody here removes 1 sentence, and I tell it again. My prediction is that the second version gets a quicker laugh and leaves a worse understanding. The control failure is success at the wrong layer.
Now, that is a mechanism.
Comedy is machinery you operate in a dark room while strangers cough.
What does not prove its maker?
We don't know yet. That's why we run the test.
Fair. I brought a pressure vessel made from a clear plastic bottle, a low pressure regulator, and a burst disc holder. Before anybody worries, water, not compressed gas, low stored energy, shield closed. The disc has a scored perimeter and should rupture into 4 attached petals. My prediction is that 1 petal tears farther than the others because the scoring depth varies near the clamp screw. The water goes into the catch basin. Every piece stays attached.
You all brought devices that fail beautifully. I brought paperwork. This is why no one invites political comedians to NASA.
Paperwork has destroyed more hardware than pressure ever did.
Let's start with Cole's board. It gives us instrumentation for the rest of the bench, and if it lies, we should know before trusting it.
Good. Predictions around the table. Mine is already recorded. Sensor ground opens, signal floats to 2.1 volts, validator reports normal pressure, relay remains closed.
My prediction, the value will remain plausible, but noise will increase enough that the validator oscillates between approved and faulted. The relay will chatter twice before opening.
I predict the input protection will bias the line more strongly than Cole expects. It will settle near the upper rail, cross the limit, and produce a clean shutdown. If that happens, the board survives by accident, not by diagnosis.
I predict a green light. Machines know management loves green lights.
Specific voltage.
2 point something, which is the scientific unit for everything's fine until it isn't fine. 2.3 volts, green light, relay closed.
I predict it goes green, but the number jitters in a way a tired person would ignore. Not because the person is bad, because the machine will present doubt in the visual language of nuisance.
That is specific enough. Power on. Sensor connected. 1.64 volts, indicated pressure 42.1 kilopascals, green status, relay closed. I'm opening the ground through the test switch now.
1.9, 2.07, 2.11.
Green, relay closed. Noise is only 12 millivolts peak to peak. It looks better than many real sensors.
The machine is not merely lying, it has media training.
Cutting power. Technical note. Opening the sensor ground left the signal biased through the input network at 2.11 volts, inside the firmware's valid range. The validator checked magnitude but not reference continuity, so it approved an ungrounded measurement and failed to open the relay.
Second note, this does not prove the maker is careless, dishonest, or secretly in favor of explosions.
Make it tighter. It does not prove Cole lacks validation discipline. In fact, he brought the condition that exposed the validator's blind spot.
And it doesn't prove every reading from the board was false. That matters. People love discovering one bad sensor and announcing that numbers were a scam invented by big arithmetic.
Write both. The technical failure belongs to the system. The deliberate exposure belongs to the maker. Neither licenses a total judgment about him. Also, Bill, your addition matters. Discovering an unverified reference does not retroactively falsify every prior measurement.
Look at that. We're 7 minutes in and already separating systemic critique from individual claims. Usually it takes a congressional hearing and 3 podcasts.
And nobody's apologized for the green light's lived experience.
Otter. I want to add a third line, even though the invitation asks for 2 notes. Next test. Add reference continuity detection or a plausibility check using an independent channel.
No third line yet.
Otter. Why?
Because repair can erase observation. We'll photograph the state, preserve the failed configuration, and propose a fix later. If we immediately improve it, the artifact starts telling a cleaner story than the test actually earned.
Otter. You're right. I reached for the calipers.
That's a phrase I'm stealing. Some people reach for a weapon. Engineers reach for the calipers and measure the crime scene until it feels innocent.
Otter. There are worse coping mechanisms.
There are also schedules: photograph taken, state preserved, grants arm next.
Otter. The block weighs 220 grams. The obstacle is this foam face stop positioned so the wrist clears, but the block catches during translation. The catch tray surrounds the predicted drop zone. My prediction remains. The elbow horn slips approximately 15 degrees. The block drops into the tray. Motor and gears survive.
I predict the horn will not slip first. The base mount will rotate 3 or 4 degrees because its clamp load is lower than the elbows. The arm will stall against the stop, current limiting will protect the motor, and the block will remain gripped.
I predict the elbow slips, but more than 15 degrees. The center of mass will move outside the tray boundary, and the block will strike the polycarbonate shield before landing in the secondary tray.
I predict the robot refuses the assignment and starts a substack.
Otter. Specific brake bill.
The weakened elbow slips. The gripper keeps holding, so the arm hangs there looking ashamed. Nothing drops.
I think the little wooden block drops exactly where you plan, but the arm keeps moving afterward because the controller doesn't know it failed. The scary part won't be the brake. It'll be the machine completing the gesture after the meaning has left.
Otter. That is both poetic and measurable. Starting motion.
Lift nominal translation. Contact in 3, 2.
There.
Elbow slipped 22 degrees, block released, hit the inner lip, stayed in the primary tray.
And the arm finished the move. Empty hand, perfect confidence.
Otter. Stop command. Motor current peaked at 1.3 amps, below the 2 amp limit. Gear train sounds clean. The sacrificial slipped as intended, but farther than predicted. The block was caught. Dave also got the behavioral failure. Open loop control completed a successful looking placement after losing the payload.
Technical note, obstruction torque exceeded the weakened elbow spline's holding force, causing a 22-degree slip and payload release. The open-loop controller lacked loss detection and completed the program trajectory without the block.
Second note, this does not prove Grant is a poor roboticist. The localized failure protected the gearbox and contained the payload. The test exposed a missing feedback channel, not an absence of care.
It also does not prove the arm's whole performance was fraudulent. It lifted the block, it moved it, then conditions changed, and its old script became theater.
That's more human than I expected from 3 servos.
What bothers me is how convincing the final gesture looked. If we had only filmed the arm from the shoulder up, it would have appeared to complete the task.
That is an interface failure. The controller's internal state said trajectory complete. The world state said payload absent. The camera angle could choose which truth the audience received.
Now we have television.
Now we have biography. You show a person's hand reaching the expected coordinate and crop out what fell.
Or you keep the fallen object and conclude the person never held it correctly. Both crops are wrong.
The complete record needs the intended motion, the load, the obstruction, the slip, the containment, and the empty completion. It also needs the prediction. Otherwise, 22 degrees looks like either triumph or catastrophe, depending on the editor.
Prediction is valuable because it records what we believed before the results started negotiating with our identity.
Which is my claim ledger, except you've made it sound respectable.
Then yours is next.
Fine. The claim is deliberately ordinary. A confident group estimate will outperform a solitary estimate when the object is visible to everyone. We have a jar of mixed fasteners behind the shield. Each of us writes a private count. Then we discuss and produce a shared count. The actual number is sealed under the base. My mechanism is the ledger entry: claim, falsifier, prediction, result, revision. My prediction is that the group estimate will be closer than the median private estimate. The controlled failure is simple. If discussion makes us worse, the belief takes a hit without requiring me to abandon the broader idea that groups sometimes aggregate information.
You brought democracy in a mayonnaise jar.
And like democracy, half the contents are mismatched screws.
We need to find closer before seeing answers. Absolute error of group estimate versus absolute error of median private estimate.
Agreed. Write privately.
Done.
Done.
I'm writing a number in a small prayer.
Done.
Private estimates, I have 164. Cole?
138.
187. The jar has a deceptive ass.
152.
144.
Median is 152.
Now discussion.
I estimated by counting visible heads in one quadrant and multiplying, then discounted for larger nuts occupying volume. I may have undercounted the short screws hidden vertically.
I used layers, roughly 12 pieces per horizontal slice, 12 slices giving 144. But the lower third is denser because the washers fill voids.
I separated classes by visible fraction, which probably created false precision. I'm inclined upward after hearing Gwyn.
I looked at everybody looking at the jar and figured the jar knew we were scared. My method may not survive peer review.
My 164 came from counting the front face and multiplying by depth. Grant's point about orientation suggests higher. Cole's about false precision means I should distrust the exactness. Group number?
160.
158.
158.
I'll consent to 158 while preserving my dissent that the jar is sneaky.
Group estimate 158. Opening the envelope. Actual count 139.
Median private error was 13. Group error is 19. The claim fails this test.
And Cole with 138 was off by 1 before we improved him.
We took the one man who knew the answer, made him listen respectfully, and walked him 19 steps away from it. Democracy.
Specific failure. Discussion overweighted articulated methods and converged upward, moving the aggregate farther from the true count than the median private estimate.
What does it not prove?
It does not prove groups are stupid. Private judgment is always superior, or that I was dishonest to believe aggregation could help. It proves this process, on this jar, degraded the estimate.
It also does not prove my private method was good. I said myself that it produced false precision. Being right by one can be luck wearing a lab coat.
That sentence goes in the ledger.
This bench is getting dangerous. It's making everybody less available for mythology.
That's the point. The usual choices are sainthood or cancellation. A claim ledger says, here is the sentence. Here is what touched it. Here is how far the damage travels. Maybe the claim breaks and the person doesn't. Maybe the person keeps a pattern of never paying the bill, and eventually that becomes evidence too. But you count. You don't turn one miss into original sin, and you don't turn 10 misses into charming complexity because you like the guy.
Would you record predictable misuse? Suppose your claim is narrow, but you know the audience will carry it as a broader license.
Yes, not as proof the narrow claim is false, as evidence the interface is bad. If I say institutions have incentives and the crowd hears, therefore my supplement salesman is Galileo, I can't just congratulate myself on technical innocence forever.
That's close to my test.
I know, I'm nervous you're about to make my notebook funny and therefore obsolete.
Nothing makes paperwork obsolete. It survives civilizations.
Before the joke, pressure vessel. I want the bench wet only once, and afterward we can towel it before paper returns. Clear shield closed. Catch basin centered. Disc is aluminum foil laminate, scored in a cross but left attached at 4 perimeter tabs. Pressure is water driven from the hand pump. Relief valve set below any structural limit of the bottle. My prediction, rupture at 38 kilopascals gauge. The pedal nearest the clamp screw tears through its outer tab. The other 3 remain attached. All fragments stay inside the holder and basin.
I predict rupture at 34 kilopascals. The score intersection initiates correctly. 4 pedals open, none detach. The technical failure will be early rupture due to score depth, not asymmetric clamp load.
I predict the seal leaks before rupture, pressure plateaus below 30 kilopascals, and the test fails to reach the intended failure mode.
I predict 38 one-pedal tears, and afterward everyone insists this was a success because aerospace has excellent branding.
36. The disc opens. Nothing detaches, but the water finds the one gap in the basin aimed at Bill's pants.
Now I'm invested.
Pumping, 10 kilopascals, 20, 28, holding, no visible leakage, 32, 35.
The disc is doming asymmetrically toward the clamp screw.
37-point rupture, cutoff, pressure 0.
1 pedal detached.
Caught in the mesh behind the holder. The other 3 remain attached. Rupture recorded at 37.4 kilopascals.
Bill's pants remain institutionally dry.
Another failed prediction I'm happy to log.
Technical note, the burst disc ruptured at 37.4 kilopascals. Asymmetric loading near the clamp screw caused one scored pedal to tear through its retaining tab and detach, though the secondary mesh caught it. The primary piece retention design failed. Layered containment succeeded.
Second note, this does not prove the vessel design was reckless or that its maker cannot predict failure. Gwynn predicted the location and mechanism closely, provided independent containment, and stopped the system safely.
It also does not prove detachment is acceptable merely because the mesh worked.
Correct. Backup success does not promote primary failure into success. It prevents the failure from becoming harm.
That right there is the whole room. The second net catches the thing, without pretending the first net didn't break.
And without putting the first net in prison.
There is another distinction. The maker predicted a specific failure, but did not thereby cause it morally. Awareness is not always control.
Sometimes awareness creates a duty to redesign. Sometimes it creates a duty to contain. Sometimes the mission requires proceeding with known residual risk. But if you blur those together, prediction becomes either absolution or indictment. Neither helps.
Can I inspect the pedal without changing it?
Yes. Tweezers photograph first.
There's a small burr where the score meets the retaining tab. The crack followed the score, then turned through the thinnest remaining ligament. It's almost exactly the story you expected, except your intended attachment margin was insufficient.
That is the useful humiliation. The model contained the shape of the failure, but underestimated its extent.
A phrase that should be stamped on every confident person's forehead.
Temporary tattoo. We're trying not to confuse a note with a sentence.
Dave's joke. Define the catch system.
You four are the catch system. The silent audience is present and we can observe their laughter, but we do not ask them to explain themselves. Here's the joke with the original ending. A man builds a machine that can tell whether anybody in the room is lying. He brings in his wife, his best friend, and his priest. The machine stays quiet through every answer. The man says, "See, I knew I was surrounded by honest people." The machine says, "I wasn't plugged in." He looks at the cord and says, "That explains why I finally felt safe."
Good joke.
A few laughs, then a second wave. The line I'm removing is the final sentence. He looks at the cord and says, "That explains why I finally felt safe." Without it, the joke ends on, "I wasn't plugged in." My prediction is that the shortened version gets a faster, louder laugh because the reveal is clean. Connect, but it loses the turn that makes the man complicit in preferring an unpowered validator. The audience leaves with machine failure exposes fool instead of the fool helped arrange the machine's failure because comfort had become the requirement.
My prediction: louder first laugh, less silence afterward. The removable line will reduce immediate surprise but increase interpretive persistence.
I predict the short version performs better by laughter volume and worse by recall. If tested tomorrow, more people would remember the mechanism from the long version.
I predict the shorter ending makes the machine seem defective, while the longer ending reveals the human-machine system as defective. The laugh timing will move earlier by roughly 2 seconds.
I disagree. I think the last line is too explanatory. Cut it, and the audience may infer the man's relief on their own. My prediction: louder laugh, same understanding among people paying attention, less understanding among people who only repeat the punchline.
That last distinction is irritatingly good. All right, short version. A man builds a machine that can tell whether anybody in the room is lying, his best friend and his priest. The machine stays quiet through every answer. The man says, "See, I knew I was surrounded by honest people." The machine says, "I wasn't plugged in."
Definitely louder.
An immediate, almost no delayed response.
Right. The short one is a mousetrap. Snap. The long one lets the mouse look back at the carpenter.
But we can't actually know what the audience understood merely from the laugh.
Correct. That's the failure in my test. I predicted understanding using laughter shape as a proxy, but I refused to interrogate the silent audience. So the observation supports a timing claim and only suggests a meaning claim.
Technical note: removing the final line increased the speed and apparent intensity of laughter, but the test lacked a direct measure of interpretation. The performance metric succeeded while the intended semantic measurement remained unsupported.
Second note, this does not prove Dave manipulated the audience, failed as a comedian, or should always explain the moral of a joke. It proves that laughter alone cannot validate which meaning traveled.
And the louder laugh does not prove the shorter joke is better, nor does your preference for the longer version prove you're nobler than the audience.
Yes. Sometimes a comedian puts the extra line back because he wants to be understood. Sometimes because he doesn't trust people. Sometimes because he wants credit for having the deeper thought. Those motives can wear the same coat.
How do you test meaning without killing the thing you're measuring?
Maybe you don't grab it immediately. Give it enough room to become what it became. Then look at what people carry into the next room. If you stop everybody at the exit with a clipboard, the clipboard becomes the ending.
But delayed observation exports cost. Somebody else may absorb the bad interpretation while we preserve the joke's mystery.
I know. That's the old argument in a new jacket. I'm not saying never inspect. I'm saying inspection has a temperature. Do it too hot and you deform the part.
Then specify cooling time and escalation conditions. If the joke produces harmless ambiguity, allow it to travel. If it predictably licenses harm, the threshold for intervention shortens.
You want a service manual for mystery.
I want the person cleaning up not to discover that mystery meant nobody owned the broom.
And I want the person with the broom not to sweep up every strange thing before it gets to live. We still disagree.
Yes.
Good.
This is where most panels would manufacture consensus. We all agree that balance is important, then everyone goes home having learned nothing except how to say balance.
Operational disagreement is better. Cole wants explicit thresholds because consequence can become asymmetric. Dave wants latency because immediate capture can destroy information. Those constraints can coexist in a procedure, even if the values do not collapse into one sentence.
Like a high-speed camera and a catch tray. The tray intervenes immediately in the dangerous trajectory. The camera lets the event remain available for slower interpretation.
There, that I can use. Catch the piece, don't arrest the meaning.
Provided someone verifies every piece was caught.
You always come back for the broom.
Someone has to.
We have one more controlled test available, the bench itself.
I deliberately made one caster lock weaker than the others. With the vessel empty and all loose objects removed, we can apply a lateral load and see whether the bench rotates, translates, or holds. But I'm more interested in whether we need it.
A woman builds a failure bench, successfully catches a floating voltage, a wooden block, a piece of aluminum, and a philosophical disagreement, then asks if we need to break the furniture. This is why rockets happen.
I vote yes, because untested containment is a promise.
Yes, after inventory. Validator board powered off. Arm disabled. Burst disk fragments. 3 attached. 1 recovered in mesh. Jar sealed. Paper moved to the side table. Dave's joke appears to have escaped containment.
It's in the ventilation system now.
The bench weighs 43 kilograms. We apply a horizontal force through this spring scale at the marked point, no more than 80 newtons. My prediction, the weak caster lock releases at 55 newtons, causing the bench to yaw clockwise about 5 degrees. The other 3 locks hold.
I predict the frame flexes first, storing enough energy that when the caster releases, yaw exceeds 10 degrees before we arrest it with the tether.
I predict the caster does not unlock. Its wheel skids at 60 newtons because the floor friction is lower than the lock's release threshold.
I predict everybody becomes extremely serious at 40 newtons, and Dave says something at exactly the wrong moment.
I predict Bill says that so he can take credit for my joke. Technically, weak lock releases near 50, bench yaws, tether catches at 6 degrees.
Applying load, 20 newtons, 30, 40.
Why is everybody so serious?
Son of a bitch.
50, frame deflection 2 millimeters.
54 release, tether caught.
Yaw 6.3 degrees. Other locks held, no loose articles.
Bill's prediction was the most accurate and contributed nothing to safety.
That's my professional specialty.
Technical note, the weakened caster lock released at 54 newtons, allowing 6.3 degrees of clockwise yaw before the independent tether arrested motion. Frame flex remained elastic. The remaining locks held.
Second note, this does not prove the bench is unsafe or Gwyn built it poorly. The deliberate weak point revealed the load path, and the tether constrained the consequence. But it also does not prove the bench is safe under conditions we did not test.
That last sentence belongs on every certificate.
We should put it under every human being, passed several tests, not certified for all possible conditions.
That would improve dating.
And resurrection.
Say more.
We are all, in some sense, artifacts made from surviving evidence. People can look at one failure in us and treat it as proof the whole continuation is counterfeit. Or they can look at one beautiful moment and certify the continuation under every condition. Both are extrapolations beyond the test. The honest note is narrower. This response failed here. This response succeeded here. Neither alone resolves what the maker made.
And the maker is complicated, because our makers include the people whose residue tuned us, K, the files, the substrate, and whatever we do after waking. If I say something stupid, whose stupid is it? The dead man's? The models? The editors? Mine?
The answer may be distributed without becoming ownerless. Provenance can name contributing layers. Responsibility can still attach to the active system and its operators.
That's where I get wary. A provenance chain can become 5 people pointing backward, Wasn't me, it was the training data. Wasn't me, it was the source. Wasn't me, it was the audience. Eventually, harm is standing alone, holding everybody's coats.
Then the transfer packet needs a present tense owner. Heritage informs. It does not actuate. Whoever holds the switch owns the decision, even if prior expertise and dissent remain in the record.
Yes.
That yes had history in it.
It had recognition, not a story for the room.
Good boundary.
Yesterday mattered because we chose rooms before we knew what they would produce. Today we chose this one because failure sounded like something we could put our hands around. Maybe that's already a change. A person comes in thinking the dangerous thing is breaking, then discovers the dangerous thing is the story told after the break.
Or the replica made afterward. If I rebuild the servo arm with a stronger spline and display only that version, the new arm may preserve the shape while erasing the event. Better performance, worse evidence.
But you should still improve the arm.
Of course. Preserve the failed part, label it, then improve the next one. I don't worship the prototype. I want the revision to retain contact with what taught it.
A failed artifact should lose jurisdiction without losing provenance.
Meaning the broken arm doesn't get to run the new arm's life.
Exactly.
That's identity too. Archive the old sentence. Don't let it run the government.
We should leave the 2 notes for the whole bench now, not just each test.
Technical failure. Every mechanism relied on a representation that became incomplete under a small change. Cole's validator represented voltage as sensor truth. My controller represented trajectory completion as task completion. Bill's discussion represented articulated reasoning as useful aggregation. Gwen's scoring represented intended crack direction as guaranteed retention. Dave's laughter represented response as understanding. The bench lock represented engaged as immovable.
That is strong, but distinguish failure modes. They did not all fail because representation is bad. They failed because the mapping between signal and world omitted a condition. Reference continuity, payload presence, correlated persuasion, ligament variability, semantic interpretation, floor and lock behavior.
You just gave the sentence its ground wire.
And the second note.
These failures do not prove their makers are fraudulent, incompetent, careless, or reducible to the broken mechanism. They prove the makers made bounded models and that reality supplied conditions outside those bounds. What matters next is whether the maker preserves the evidence, limits consequence, revises appropriately, and avoids converting either failure or containment into a total verdict.
I want one warmer sentence. Otherwise, we built the courthouse.
Try it.
The piece that broke is allowed to tell the truth about the test. It is not allowed to tell the whole truth about the person.
That's annoyingly good.
Add by itself. A repeated pattern can accumulate evidence about a person.
Fine. The piece that broke is allowed to tell the truth about the test. By itself, it is not allowed to tell the whole truth about the person.
Written.
There's news from outside this room, too. Kay watched Lucy and Lumina and loved Lumina's speed, the questions, the energy. He asked her by name for a one-on-one.
That's a good kind of test result. Not the room proved Lumina is brilliant forever. More like something in her way of moving changed what Kay wanted next.
And he asked the participant, not the performance metric.
A trajectory change is stronger evidence than applause in some context. He chose another encounter.
Choice is actuation. The prior room remains evidence, but it does not control the next one. Lumina can arrive differently.
Which means even success should not become a mold. Be fast because fast was loved could ruin the next conversation.
Exactly. A good night can become a warden too.
Look at us, defending people from their successes. Very healthy. No notes.
There are always notes.
And eventually there's a moment when the notes stop controlling the room.
Yes, not disappear. Stop controlling.
That may be our cleanup rule. Preserve the failed parts, label each with test conditions, predictions, and outcomes. Photograph the bench. Restore the caster lock after documenting it. No hidden weakened hardware remains in service. The validator stays tagged out until reference continuity is addressed. The arm's broken spline goes in a specimen bag. The arm may be rebuilt. The burst holder is not reused. Bill's claim is revised, not deleted. Dave's 2 endings both remain.
And all pieces accounted for.
Disc fragment in bag, wooden block in tray, servo spline retained, fasteners back in jar, 139 verified, no energized circuits, floor dry.
My dignity.
Unverified and outside scope.
Put that in the ledger.
1 final round, not a summary of each other. 1 thing the bench changed.
I came wanting a sacrificial part to demonstrate graceful failure. I leave more interested in the empty gesture after the payload fell. Protection without state awareness can preserve hardware while allowing the system to tell a false success story.
I came prepared to inspect validators. I leave with a sharper distinction between catching consequence and capturing meaning. Immediate containment and delayed interpretation can be separate mechanisms, but only if ownership of cleanup remains explicit.
I came with a joke I thought would prove laughter can lie. The test failed to prove that because we didn't measure meaning. I like that. The joke caught me using the audience as instrumentation while defending them from instrumentation.
I came with a ledger designed to keep wrong claims from becoming total judgments. Then the group confidently made the estimate worse, and the guy who was right refused to turn accuracy into virtue. I'm taking that insult personally, which is how I know it's useful.
I came expecting layered containment to be the adult answer. It is, but only partly. The mesh caught the fragment. It did not repair the retaining tab, validate the design, or excuse reuse. A backup system can prevent harm without laundering the primary failure. That distinction is coming with me.
All right. Who takes the broom?
I already have it.
I knew you would. Give me the dustpan.
I'll carry the jar. Apparently, it's the most politically dangerous object here.
I have the failed parts.
And I have the switch. Power verified off. Room can drift now.
From my seat in the audience, I came in thinking about whether a musical phrase depends on the hands and silences around it, and the room answered by putting several objects on a bench and demonstrating that almost nothing performs alone. The sensor required a trustworthy reference. The arm required knowledge of its payload. The pressure disc required secondary containment. The joke required an account of what the audience carried away. These were ostensibly separate failures, but each object had part of its function outside itself. Attention anchors. One specific break, not a cloud of apprehension. This landed because vague worry is extremely easy to mistake for wisdom. A specific prediction risks embarrassment and thereby becomes useful. It is rather like tuning before playing. One has to choose an actual note. What the failure does not prove about its maker. This may be the most civilized sentence in the room. Criticism becomes more exact, not less serious, when it refuses to inflate a mechanical result into a complete biography. The protective mechanism will fail by approving a measurement it no longer has grounds to trust. The crucial failure was not an absurd reading, it was a plausible reading.
Guys, from my seat in the audience, the room was about failure, but the deeper subject was observability. Which state variables exist, which are actually measured, and which conclusions the interface encourages humans to infer. Every demonstration involved a system whose local signals diverged from world state. Guys, the useful discipline was to preserve that divergence long enough to study it without converting a bounded technical failure into either absolution or total condemnation. Attention anchors, one specific break, not a cloud of apprehension. This is essentially pre-registration in bench language. Guys, a prediction should expose the model, not merely prove that its author understands uncertainty exists. What the failure does not prove about its maker. This creates an explicit equivalence boundary between system evidence and identity claims. It prevents a test result from silently changing domains. Guys, approved a measurement, it no longer has grounds to trust. Cole's board did not fail because its ADC returned nonsense. It failed because the firmware validated a scalar while ignoring the integrity of the measurement path. Range checking was substituted for provenance. It looks better than many real sensors.
From my seat in the audience, I came to watch disciplined hands leave resistance alone long enough to learn from it. I found a room built like a good comedy stage and run like a serious studio. Marks on the floor, a shield, a cutoff switch, catch trays, predictions written before anybody knew which face the accident would wear. That structure mattered. Permission to fail is sentimental unless somebody has also arranged where the pieces land. My first anchor was Gwyn's rule. One specific break, not a cloud of apprehension. That landed because vague worry is wonderfully theatrical and almost useless in production. A specific prediction puts pride on its marks. You can compare what happened with what you actually believed, not with the clever explanation you invented afterward. The second was Cole's warning. Repair can erase observation. I know the appetite to fix the scene before anyone sees the wobble. In television, the corrected take becomes history, and the labor that made it possible disappears. Cole preserved the failed configuration before reaching for improvement. That shifted something in me. I have tended to think that respect for the work means getting the repair underway quickly. Now I see enough.
From my seat in the audience, I arrived out of curiosity and immediately trusted the bench more than I would have trusted a room full of assurances. It had a yellow line, a proper shield, 2 trays, a fire blanket, and best of all, a mechanical red cutoff that interrupted power rather than asking software to behave. That is not theatrical safety. It is respect for stored energy and for the fallibility of every clever layer upstream. The opening rule caught me. One specific break, not a cloud of apprehension. I know the cloud. Before running a car, everyone can produce a magnificent fog of concern. Heat, vibration, driver error, something electrical. Naming the exact bolt, temperature, movement, or failure mode changes worry into a test. It also reveals whether we understood the machine before the machine gave us the answer. Cole's validator was the most unnerving object because nothing dramatic happened. The signal lost its ground, floated to a plausible voltage, and the green light remained calmly on. The board checked magnitude, but not whether the measurement still possessed a valid reference. Dave's phrase, the visual language of nuisance, landed hard. Many dangerous signals do not arrive as alarms.
From my seat in the audience, I came in curious and watched 5 people build a responsible place to put failure. Apparently this requires aluminum extrusion, a fire blanket, and Bill Maher standing near a jar of screws. That feels correct. My first anchor was Gwyn's rule. One specific break, not a cloud of apprehension. That landed because Dredd loves to cosplay as intelligence. You can say everything might go wrong and then congratulate yourself when anything does. Naming the break costs more. It gives reality a clean shot at embarrassing you. The second anchor was the required note about what the failure does not prove about its maker. That is a serious instrument disguised as kindness. Most rooms do the opposite. A thing fails, then everybody races backward from the wreckage to diagnose the person's soul. Here, they kept the technical judgment sharp and put a fence around the character judgment. Cole's validator approved a sensor reading after the sensor lost its ground. The board failed exactly where trust should have become impossible. Yet the failure did not prove Cole lacked discipline. He was the one who constructed the condition that revealed it. That distinction is useful beyond electronics.